Right now in South Korea, a woman is systematically demolishing a retail storefront and physically beating the employees because a worker behind the counter told her she could not have a free refill on a cup of cola. Think about that for a second. We are talking about a 50-cent drink, a standard company policy, and a routine interaction that turned into a felony-level scene of property destruction and battery in the blink of an eye. There was no deep political motive and no grand grievance. There was only the sound of glass shattering, high-pitched screaming, and a total abandonment of every social rule we expect in a modern city. Witnesses watched in horror as she threw objects and swung her fists, all because a plastic cup stayed empty. This is not an isolated incident of someone having a bad day. It is a window into a much darker reality where the most trivial triggers lead to explosive, life-altering violence. While that store was being torn apart, another woman was starting a violent rampage at Incheon International Airport, which happens to be one of the most heavily guarded and monitored places on the entire planet. Her reason for the chaos? Her mobile phone was not charging properly. In a fit of pure rage, she didn't just complain to a technician or look for another outlet. She physically destroyed a public charging station and then proceeded to assault the airport security personnel who tried to stop her. She was jumping up and down, screaming at the top of her lungs, and using her body as a weapon against people just trying to keep the peace. It was a theatrical display of fury that ignored the presence of hundreds of cameras and armed guards. Then you have the woman at a restaurant who ordered $75 worth of alcohol and food, finished every bit of it, walked outside to grab a dirty cigarette butt off the street, and came back inside to smoke it right at her table. When the owner asked her to put it out and pay the bill, she just laughed and said she had no money. When the police finally showed up to take her away, she didn't look ashamed or scared. She turned back to the owner, smiled a big bright smile, and gave a mocking wave goodbye like she was leaving a party. She knew the police and she knew exactly what was going to happen next, which was essentially nothing. But why would they actually demand this? Why does a refusal for a soda refill or a faulty charging port trigger a total mental break and a violent criminal response? If you look at the raw facts, it becomes clear that the cola and the charger are just excuses. They are permission slips for these individuals to release a deep internal sense of absolute entitlement. It is a raw, parasitic grab for power where the person across the counter is not seen as a fellow human being or a citizen. They are seen as a subordinate, a servant who exists only to say yes. When that servant says no, it is perceived as a personal insult to their status. They aren't fighting for a refill, they are fighting to crush the person who dared to set a limit. It is about the thrill of a small-scale tyranny in a world where they feel they should be at the top of every social ladder. So what happens when these people are told they can't have what they want? They lean into the most blunt, low-level instincts of dominance. In the local culture, there is a specific type of abuse of power where a customer views a service worker as a temporary slave purchased for the price of a meal. If the meal is not perfect or the rules are enforced, the customer feels their pride has been wounded. The violence that follows is a desperate attempt to re-establish that lost pride by crushing the worker. The woman at the restaurant who mocked the owner while being arrested is the perfect example. She operates on the fact that she has nothing to lose. She has weighed the costs and the benefits and realized that the law is not a wall but a suggestions box. She derives pleasure from the fact that the business owner is helpless. She knows the owner cannot touch her, cannot get the money back, and has to watch her walk away with a smile. She is using the legal system as a shield for her own lawlessness. How did the environment get this way? Why is the reality of the streets so different from the stories told in the media? While some groups scream that the country is a dangerous place for women, the public is watching a recurring pattern of female-led violence that goes unpunished. There is a massive contradiction between the rhetoric of oppression and the reality of immunity. For example, look at what gets censored and what doesn't. A webtoon about men being used for their money by women who don't love them gets removed from major platforms because people protested. But at the same time, stories about female students sexually harassing their male teachers or erotic fiction about real people are protected as art or turned into mainstream dramas. This double standard creates a feeling that one group is allowed to be as toxic as they want because they are seen as victims by default. It gives them a moral license to act out, believing their actions are justified by a system that will always take their side. So what happened when they got exactly the kind of protection they asked for? The system backfired in the most cynical way possible. The legal framework is now full of holes that actually encourage this behavior. First, you have the suspended sentence trap. Because the prisons are too full, judges are terrified of giving out actual jail time for anything that isn't a murder. A woman can smash a store, hit a guard, or steal a meal, and she knows she will likely walk away with a slap on the wrist or a suspended sentence. If she claims she was feeling emotional or mentally unstable, the court becomes even more lenient. The punishment is so small compared to the satisfaction of the outburst that the law stops being a deterrent. It just becomes a small tax on being a jerk, and it is a tax they are more than happy to pay. The even bigger problem is the fear of the countersuit. This is the ultimate weapon. A male store owner or a security guard can be standing right there while a woman is destroying his livelihood or hitting his face, and he is paralyzed. He knows that if he grabs her arm to stop the violence or pins her down to wait for the police, she can immediately file a report for sexual harassment. In this legal system, a man being accused of that can have his life ruined before a judge even sees the case. His job is gone, his reputation is dead, and his family is shamed. This creates a situation where the victim of the assault has to just stand there and take the beating. They have to watch their store get trashed because the risk of defending themselves is higher than the cost of the damage. The aggressor knows this. They use that fear as a physical weapon. What is the result of all this? People are looking at the news and they aren't shocked anymore. They are just cynical. There is a growing group of people who are seen as a protected class, almost like royalty from a comic book, who can do whatever they want to the commoners. No one is allowed to touch them and everyone has to give them what they demand. This has led to a total breakdown of social trust. Men in the service industry are starting to realize that the only way to survive is to avoid contact entirely. They are moving toward a strategy of zero interaction because any conversation could turn into a fight, and any fight is a fight they are legally required to lose. To see how absurd this is, you just have to look at how other countries handle it. In many places, if a person starts smashing a store, they are tackled, handcuffed, and they lose their job and their social standing immediately. There are real fast consequences. But here, the person mocking the owner as the police arrive shows that there is no fear of the fallout. It is a unique kind of delinquency that is protected by the very laws meant to create a fair society. Every time a video of one of these incidents goes viral, it just reinforces the belief that the system is broken. People start wishing for harsher punishments and taking things into their own eyes because they no longer believe the courts will provide any justice. If this continues, we are heading toward a future that looks like a ghost town. The service industry is going to change into something cold and automated. We are going to see the rise of zones where no humans work at all. Business owners are going to replace every waiter and every cashier with a kiosk or a robot. It isn't just because robots are cheaper. It is because a robot doesn't care if you scream at it. A robot cannot be sexually harassed. A robot doesn't feel pain when you throw a tray at its head. The owners are going to remove the human element to remove the legal risk. The celestial dragons will still walk into the store and demand their free refills with violence, but there won't be anyone there to hit. There will only be cold metal machines and empty rooms. Men will stop helping women who are actually in trouble because the fear of being labeled a predator is too high. The social contract is being torn up line by line. The legal system will keep handing out electronic anklets and fines that nobody pays, while the streets get more dangerous for the people who actually follow the rules. This outcome is inevitable because people always choose to avoid risk when the law becomes unreliable. When the state fails to protect the small shop owner from the protected bully, the shop owner just leaves the game. The best way to describe this whole mess is the shield of glass. It is a perfect metaphor for the way things work right now. The protection given to these violent individuals is like a high-tech glass shield. It is completely transparent, so everyone can see exactly what crimes are being committed. You can see the glass breaking, you can hear the screams, and you can see the person stealing the food. But the shield is also impenetrable to the standard tools of justice. The person stands behind that glass throwing stones at everyone else, knowing that if the victim tries to strike back, they will only cut their own hands on the shards of the shield itself. The shield protects the person doing the damage, while the person being hit is left to bleed in front of the whole world. This is the essence of the crisis. This is the essence of the crisis. It isn't that there aren't enough laws. It is that the laws are applied to some people but not to others. The bully doesn't have to hide. She can walk through the world while everyone else is forced to crawl and watch their step. Until that glass shield is taken down and replaced with a system where everyone is held to the same standard, the mockery is going to continue. The final image of this system is that woman in the back of the police car waving and smiling at the person whose life she just tried to ruin. She isn't worried about the court or the judge. She knows she's protected and she's already planning her next move. Fuel the truth at dating in Korea, support the structure, stay safe in the lounge.